Good evening, everybody. Good morning, whatever time it is. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Mackey Arena. The lights on the court are out, so I've moved to what used to be called the John Wooden Room here, just off the court, just off the tunnel. I don't know if they still call it that or not. I haven't caught that piece of information quite yet, but nevertheless, it doesn't matter. I'm here. Purdue beat number 1 Purdue beat number 9 Illinois 83-78. This is your goldenblack.com rap video. It is brought to you by our friends at Purdue Club Hotel. Thank you to them, as always, for their support. It is much appreciated, and we will dive into the basketball part of this now. I thought this had some real boat race potential in it for Purdue. I thought Illinois' last 2 wins since they lost Terrence Shannon to those rape charges, I think that those profiled as adrenaline wins, and that's typically not sustainable. And the first 20 minutes or so of this game really reflected that. I thought Purdue obviously got off to a great start, damn near blew Illinois out of the building. And then obviously things changed a little bit as Zack Edey got in foul trouble. And Purdue didn't do a great job in the second half playing with a lead. There were a couple too many turnovers, way too many fouls leading to way too many just cheap Illinois points. A couple of quick shots, a few of them come to mind, 2 of them at least. I just didn't think Purdue didn't play great situational basketball in the second half. Maybe I'm holding them too high a standard, but it's a standard they've obviously proven themselves worthy of. I think you got to give Illinois credit here too. Marcus Damask down the stretch of this game proved he's worth every penny of however many hundreds of thousands of dollars Illinois paid him to come there. Last spring, I thought Luke Goody has always been a player I've really liked, and obviously made some big shots for them. But Purdue had Purdue been a little sharper, its lead that peaked at 21, probably never would have been threatened. There were 2 untimely 1-and-1 misses. There was a weird flagrant foul. Stuff happens in basketball, but the 2 1-and-1s really hurt Purdue too. Just happens. Otherwise Purdue had a great foul shooting night. Why did Purdue win this game? Ultimately, Trey Kaufman ran, and to a certain extent Mason Gillis as well. I think the tone those 2 guys set, playing largely without Zack Edey, and I say playing without Zack Edey, and Zack Edey still got 15 rebounds in 22 minutes, so it's not like he was a complete non-factor in this game. But Trey Kaufman was the guy who backed up everything I've always told you about him since last year, where if you just slide him into Zack Edey's role as Purdue's go-to guy in the post with Zack Edey minutes, this is what you're getting. Maybe not quite this every single game, but you're getting 18 and 10, and you're getting an all-Big Ten player. It was just yesterday before this game that I decided I was going to talk to him, because I thought this sort of thing might be coming. There was going to be a game this year where I thought Trey Kaufman was going to be the difference. And I had no idea, obviously, in advance that Zack Edey was going to get in foul trouble. This might have been the one game this year that the refs just weren't going to let him play. And he explicitly said that he thinks he should be averaging 8 rebounds a game. Now, that's ambitious when you're playing next to Zack Edey, who obviously sucks up a lot of rebounds, and you're playing the lesser minutes half of a timeshare with Mason Gillis. So 8 rebounds, a lot of rebounds. But I'm not going to argue with him. But we also talked about how his work on his foul shooting and his three-point shooting have really paid off. And there you go. He was 6 of 6 at the line before that one untimely 1-on-1 miss, and he made that big 3 down the stretch of this basketball game, which was a critical play for Purdue and a sign of just incredible confidence by a guy who has every reason to be really confident. He gets 23 points when Zack Edey was out of the game. Purdue's pick-and-roll element was just as effective. I think Trey Kaufman is very different than Edey, but he gives him a little bit of a short roll element to that, which is another thing that people have to worry about guarding when they're using him that way. Just a great all-around game for him. His effort level this season for a guy who's a quote-unquote scorer has been exemplary, and that's always the case with Mason Gillis. And he is probably a Terminator, because this guy's always hurt. He's always playing through something, and it never matters. He just plays his ass off every single game. And I'm going to start clipping some of these moments where you see him just like desperately flailing to get under somebody on a free throw to try to get an offensive rebound. He is just pretty much the definition of relentless, and I think that's the best I could come up with. He is the definition of relentless. That is really, really big-time journalism right there, folks. Anyway, he and Trey Kaufman-Rand really, really set the tone for this win. Not as much with their scoring, and I mean, you get 31 points between the two of them, 3 threes on 4 attempts, but their effort on the glass led to this gigantic rebounding gulf in Purdue's favor. 18 offensive rebounds for Purdue. Probably doesn't even tell the story, because these guys, the rebounds they didn't get, they batted it around, and ultimately, oftentimes, Purdue did secure that basketball. And that stuff doesn't really reflect on them statistically, but I think when I go back and watch this tomorrow, I'm going to see the offensive rebounds both those guys got, but also the offensive rebounds those guys caused. And that's oftentimes the case with Zack Edey as well. Just the space he takes up creates opportunities for other people to rebound. I think that kind of contribution really goes overlooked in basketball, and it's something you really have to pay close attention and notice sometimes. For Purdue to win this game, really playing half the game without a guy who's the best player in the country, who normally plays 3/4 of the game, was a big deal. It just was. Just a huge deal for them. When Zack Edey was in the game offensively in the second half, he absolutely roasted Illinois' defense, not just as a scorer, but as a passer. And there wasn't a whole lot Illinois could do to stop him. And I think had the foul trouble not occurred, obviously that's a big if. Foul trouble is part of basketball. It's just not something that Purdue's used to seeing Zack Edey affected by. For whatever reason. Obviously, the other sides of these games will always have their opinions on that. But this is not something Purdue is really conditioned for. They're not really accustomed to having to play without him because he's always been there. He's always been able to carry so many minutes, and he's so integral to everything they do. So for them to be able to win this game with him sitting out 18 minutes because of foul trouble, I think it was a pretty big deal. And, as long as we're talking about outliers, he's 0 for 3 from the foul line, and this is a 77% shooter. So this was a weird game for a player who obviously affects Purdue in so many different ways, affects the opponent in so many different ways. Just a really good experience, I think, for Purdue to have to play this game with him in a limited capacity, only gets 5 shots. And a good experience for Purdue to win this game basically without him. Now, I'm saying that when the guy got 15 rebounds in 22 minutes and did still score 10 points, but this is not going to be something that happens very often. As I've said before, I think that, and this isn't trying to sound like pro-Purdue propaganda here, but you sort of wonder if maybe this was the one game this year where they just kind of weren't going to let him play. Or somebody got in the ref's ears and things like that. It's just that's the nature of officiating in the Big Ten. You don't expect for it to happen to you at home, but it did, and Purdue won anyway. This very easily could have been a 20-point win. I want to give Illinois all the credit in the world because they're obviously very different than they were 2 weeks ago, and they fought like hell here at the end. They made a lot of big-time shots. They made a lot of big-time plays. But Purdue's got to be sharper at the end of this game. I think the turnovers really were excessive when Purdue was playing with a lead. Again, I thought there were 2 quick shots. I think that there were just too many fouls, leading to too many cheap points for Illinois. This is nitpicking. Purdue won a really big game here tonight. But as you know, if you pay attention to my years and years of doing this, when a team is this good, I think it's appropriate to point out what's going to get them beat sometime if it keeps up, as opposed to why they're winning, which is a very easy answer typically, which is to say they're just great, they're really good. But I think Purdue's got to be more disciplined from a defensive perspective in terms of the touch fouls. I think they got to be more secure with the basketball, playing with a lead. And I think Braden Smith, as awesome as he's been all year long and as awesome as he is, period, I thought there were a couple of plays that maybe were a little bit bold, given the time and score, things like that. I just didn't think Purdue played an awesome situational basketball game down the stretch. They made their free throws. Again, those two missed 1-and-1s. Just part of basketball. It just happens. They just happen to come at a bad time. But you can't give Traycoff Moran enough credit for going 6 of 6 at the line. You can't give Lance Jones enough credit for going 7 of 7 at the line. These guys are not your best foul shooters. And that for the majority of this game tonight, they were big time at the foul line. And that might have been the stat of the game, that before Traycoff Moran's last 1-and-1 miss, these two guys were 13 of 13 at the foul line. Again, this isn't Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith at the foul line making every free throw they make. This was your two 70%-ish guys going to the line, and where it's reasonable to expect them to miss, at least a third of their maybe not a third, but at least a quarter of their free throws. Had that happen tonight and everything unfolded the same way, this is basically a long, convoluted way of me saying it's good to have more points than to not have more points. But that was just a really big deal in this basketball game, obviously. I think that Purdue did a really smart and really, not to take away from them, a really obvious thing defensively to start this game by really not guarding Ty Rodgers around the perimeter. This was what teams used to do to Purdue when they had Nojel Eastern, who was a guy who impacted games in more ways than fans tended to give him credit for, but he was a non-shooter, he was a non-scorer, and you could kind of not pay much attention to him as a scoring threat. In this case, Purdue put Zack Edey on Ty Rodgers, who's a 6'6" guard wing, and basically kind of let him shoot if he wanted to, but that allowed Purdue basically to play 5-on-4 everywhere else, with Zack Edey standing in the middle, really not accounting for anybody. I think that was a fairly apparent strategy that Purdue was going to do, because I think it was just too obvious. Ty Rodgers is a good player who affects winning as well as a lot of guys in the Big Ten, but if a guy's not going to shoot the three and there's really no other way he can hurt you as a scorer, there's really not a whole lot of reason to dedicate one of your perimeter defensive assets to that guy. And I think that was a good move by Purdue, albeit one that could have been predicted, albeit one that Illinois should have seen coming if they didn't. They'll do it again in Champaign at the end of the year. What the answer is to that, I don't know, but I think that was a big part of Purdue's fast start, was Illinois just really kind of struggling to score in that opening stretch of the game. And late in the game, they figured some things out with their guards posting up and things like that. But again, Purdue just committed too many soft fouls, didn't make Illinois earn it as much as Purdue needed to make Illinois earn it. So obviously a great win for Purdue. This might be, I don't want to say this is going to be the only, because there's a long way to go this season, but as of right now, this is one of the few quad one opportunities Purdue's going to have on its home floor. And for now, this is a quad one win. We'll see where Illinois goes the rest of the season without Terrence Shannon. They certainly acquitted themselves well. That was probably a poor choice in terms of terminology. I apologize for that. It's completely unintentional. But they did represent themselves very well here and look like a team that is still going to be a top half of the Big Ten at worst, and obviously make the NCAA tournament. So the possibility is this can stay a quad one win, but we'll see what happens. I think you have to give Illinois a lot of credit for coming back from being 21 down to at least make this interesting, toward the end of the game, when this profiled for 20-plus minutes as a game where the walk-ons were going to close it out, things like that. So that's what I got. Hopefully a lot of you guys are in bed. Hopefully none of you were in jail at 12:47 on a Friday night. So this has been Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And yes, I am still sick. Have been ever since Hawaii. Unbelievable. So we're still fighting through some things here, but I'll talk to you again from Nebraska this week. So thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your support. I would make my reservation at the Lincoln, Nebraska or Omaha, Nebraska Purdue Union Club Hotel, but apparently there isn't one. I can't find one online. I'm really not sure why that is, but that seems to be the case. So thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you again here in a couple of days.